Welcome to 1% Better Every Day. Today, Chip sits down with Steven Latow, Chief Strategy Officer at Zocks, winners of the Mary Blackburn Partner Challenge at the 2026 Beacon Innovators Roundtable, to talk AI, data, and what the advisory firm of the future actually looks like. Right now, here's Chip.
RJ, thanks a lot. I appreciate that. Firms have been talking about fixing their data for 20 years. I actually have had this conversation about 7 times this week. And my guest today is actually doing it. He and his team just won our Mary Blackburn Partner Challenge at the Beacon Innovators Roundtable to prove it. Steven, Chief Strategy Officer at Zocks, welcome to the show.
Chip, thanks for having me on. It's a beautiful day in Colorado. It's not every day that I get someone in my same state, so I'm excited. Hopefully we have no major hailstorms or summer thunder coming our way.
That's true. That's true. And I see you're in a different room today than the last time I spoke with you.
Well, to be honest, I'm in the Bat Cave. I was trying to go. We have this nice view of the mountains and the Aspen, and I was like, "Oh man, I'm really gonna one up Chip here and have it in the background." And then the lighting was terrible, so I conceded and came downstairs.
I get it. Recently I did a podcast down in Florida with the ocean behind, the Gulf of Mexico behind me, and people are a little jealous.
Yep, don't blame them.
When I look at Zocks, right? Zocks made an early bet that the data layer, not the front office experience, was the real constraint holding firms back. What did you see that most people were missing?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we started Zocks almost 4.5 years ago, which generally when I say that, firms are surprised. They're like, wait, we started really thinking about business application of AI 2 years ago. What were you guys doing? And the answer is we're building the platform. So the founding hypothesis of Zocks was that financial services middle and back office workflows were being hamstrung by the fact that they did not have accurate, up-to-date representations of end client data. So this was our hypothesis that AI systems were going to get built on that end client data. It needed to be clean, it needed to be up to date, and frankly, it needed to be flexible. And flexible is really important as the needs of these advisory firms changes. So we spent, about 2 years building out that platform layer. And what we got to is, hey, we have this great engine. It has public APIs. It's ready to integrate with things like MCP. We have a flexible integration engine. Okay, we need to start hydrating that data. And so that's where the note-taking app came from, is we went and actually were like, okay, what is, something we can do that's valuable for our user base to start building these client profiles? And as you know, and as this world has seen, the note-taking app in that surface area has just exploded like wildfire over the last 2 years.
Yeah, it's interesting because I sat on a Pershing panel this week and had some amazing folks with me from Citi and from Sanctuary. And I got the first question, and it was, what has given the most ROI to wealth firms? And I said, note takers, because they have really driven the ability for advisors to interact with their customers in a more meaningful way and faster.
Yep. It's been fascinating to watch. As a technologist, you think about the value chain, right? So what's your point of entry? What's the first problem you solve? Then how do you leverage that into something else that's more valuable and a tertiary value prop that adds on to that? So note taking, it really did change the way these businesses operate. It is 8 to 10 hours a week and a full person removed from this workflow where you had multiple people having to sit in a room, one scrambling to take notes, asking questions of what did I miss? And by removing that, you get better client conversations, you get faster follow-up, and you get better data. Well, the question then becomes, what are you actually able to do with that time saved? And that's where Zocks is really differentiated, right? Is we're powering those secondary workflows where not only are we helping you save time up front, but then we're helping you lower NIGO rates, we're helping you serve more households, we're helping you open accounts, all of that kind of secondary thing that slows down your team.
So additionally, right, if we take a look at, I look at the 40-year operational anchor, right? And looking at, hey, all those manual, logins that you have to do from custodians, CRMs, all those different things, looking at hand generated tax forms, and, also having clients getting locked out of their accounts. It's nuts, right? So how do you see you all smoothing that process?
Yeah, there are so many individual cases where a lack of data consistency drives client friction. I mean, you named a few examples. Hey, my client needs to send us their tax form, but they're actually locked out of their account because we use two different custodians, but they can't reset the password directly. So they have to go to our broker dealer, who then is coming back and sending them a reset link that we have to go walk them through. And the end result is client friction. And so we actually ran a 6-month beta, and it
Hmm.
was really cool because when I say beta, I mean we were starting with the real basics, Chip. We had advisors sending us a recording, we were processing it back, and we had like a 48-hour window to get them back their structured notes. But what it gave us insight into is we started to learn, okay, what is slowing your team down? And so you identify things like, hey, our intake process is really slow. We actually have this great first meeting. There are problems that the client is trying to solve. We think that our services match what their needs are, but we can't get back to them fast enough. Or we've gone and done a financial plan, we've started it and we actually need more data to finish it, but it's taking us 2, 4, 6, 14 business days to go from that second interaction to the final meeting where we start to talk about funding. And
Hmm.
so during that 6-month period, we essentially just prioritized what are the things slowing down the middle and back office. And you've seen us, if you've been watching our product announcements, we're literally checking those off the list. Email responses when clients ask questions, check. Incorporating documents into doing tax planning for the upcoming year, check. Going and looking across the different systems to identify growth opportunities or held away assets, check. And so you start to think about that value chain, and we're literally just going through what we learned in that 6-month period and layering on applications to pull people out of that assistant middle office role and into, a client service role where they're spending more time with clients.
Great answer. I love that. You guys, it's just amazing how fast you're expanding. So let's talk a little bit more about Zocks, right? So if we look at the broader audience, they see Zocks as a note taker, right? And so I always find it super interesting to see where you're going, right? And how Zocks is converting conversation into structured data, taking unstructured data and organizing it. And especially, as you're syncing, you're aligned with Salesforce, Redtail, Wealthbox, Practify. I look at that and say, that's interesting. So I want to hear your comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, I get back to the roundtable, which is such a unique event. Like, I really want to pitch it. I learned so much in just the level of engagement in that closed community of being able to talk about the real problems firms are facing. And I think it was Casey Cotton that brought up, he goes, I've been coming to these for a long time. And one of my takeaways today is the more things change, the more things stay the same. The actual clean data is the main thing hampering these firms from going and building end user workflows. And so we think about the last 40 years, and we've been in this hub and spokes model where you have, the advisor and team inputting information into a CRM, and then that CRM feeding it out into the different point systems. Well, that's required manual intervention at every single step. And there's two problems with that. The first problem is that humans are not deterministic. Like, there is data loss every single time you make one of those hops, whether it's the handoff from the advisor to the team, whether it's the team to the planning team, or whether it's even between systems, you have data loss. And the second thing is you go down to the path of least resistance where you think about what is the core workflow I have to execute. You get that done, and you don't have an opportunity or the time to think creatively about what else could we do for this client. Hey, they brought this thing up that is 18 months out, but is there prep we should be doing now? And when you're in a time constrained system, you can't operate with that creativity mindset. It's all execution. So the true beauty of what Zocks is doing is it's pulling the teams out of that routine work. where they are not the ones having to go and manually translate information coming in into the correct point system. And they're now able to think creatively with that extra time of, hey, I've noticed this trend. We have a lot of clients that have kids that are approaching high school that we probably haven't ever met. Let's go and create a program to get in touch with them, to go and form a relationship as they're going into college. And this type of service expansion results in a better client experience. And
Mhm.
we could literally see the data of it's helping our firms grow, which all of this has to get back to how can we do more? How can we go and grow our businesses?
Absolutely. When we chatted at the roundtable, we chatted a little bit about the agentic side, right? And one of the things I see, and as I talk to you guys more and more, you're creeping into account opening. You're creeping into advisor transitions, both from the advisor's information and the end investor client's information. I just see this progression occurring. Um, Share a little bit about that.
So, the way we think about our roadmap and what we're trying to accomplish is at the end of the day, we frankly want to change the unit economics of how the middle and back office operates to let these firms focus on the end client. And there's two things that are happening that I think are driving this. The first is everyone talks about fee compression, fee compression, fee compression. The reality is we're not really seeing fee compression, but what we are seeing is service expansion. Clients expect more services and they expect their advisor to not just be a money manager. That takes time. If you're inundated with having to do the nuts and bolts of running your business, you cannot go and meet the client with where they're at from a service expansion perspective. The other side, and this is where it's super fun, is if you think about a value quadrant where you have urgency and creativity as the two X and Y axes, AI operates extremely well in the bottom left quadrant where it is routine, it needs execution, it is not necessarily interrupt driven or urgency, it doesn't need a prioritization decision. And so we ask ourselves, okay, what is happening? How does that impact these firms? Well, the answer is their middle and back office has been spending all of their time there. So
Yes.
AI is pulling those people out of that routine work that is important, it is vital, but it is able to execute that. And what that means is that these firms are able to start grabbing the opportunity from the service expansion expectation.
My brain, when I kind of look at the note takers, which aren't the note takers anymore, is just, wow, this is pretty incredible. And, I think we're probably super curious about what your roadmap looks like as you kind of go through the last 6 months of 2026 and into 2027.
Yeah, so if we look at the rest of this year, there's two things we're really focused on. The first is you mentioned early on that we built a lot of integrations. Well, that's not going to stop. So one of our core value props and frankly core beliefs is we want to be an open ecosystem. We understand that advisors are going to use different point solutions for different operations. Again, looking at that service expansion, and we want to support all of them. And so if we can go and be the data translation layer that's getting the point system the data it needs to execute the action for the client, that puts us in a good position. It puts our clients in a good position. So we're going to continue to invest there. The second thing is you're going to see us going from the first and second step to the third and fourth step. And what I mean by that is you look at our email engine. When we first started, our email engine could answer about 40% of the questions that a client asked. It now can answer almost 90% of the inbound questions a client asks because we're hooked into the financial planning system, we're hooked into the CRM, and really importantly, we're starting to get hooked into the internal SOPs and data architecture of either the broker dealer or the custodian that the advisor is working with. So we actually know what has to happen for the client. And so we're going to keep chewing away at what are the things that a human has to do from a data gathering perspective. We believe that AI can do a good job of that. And the human aspect is human in the loop. They're always checking corporate actions, but also deepening those relationships. And so you're creating more workflows around, again, the example I gave. How do we map better to beneficiaries or next of kin? How do we go and have a consistent way to follow up on referrals that we receive? These growth opportunities that have kind of been executed inconsistently or are not capitalized on in the past purely because of bandwidth.
Fascinating. And I mentioned, and we talked about this the other day. I mentioned CRMs before, right? And I'm kind of seeing this, I won't call it scope creep, but in some ways, I've been thinking this for 6, 8 months or so. It seems to me that the CRMs are really kind of at risk to some point, and they need to figure some things out. I'm curious about your perspective on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few things going on. The first is that hub and spokes model that I described is changing. It's now a data flow where you have inputs on the left, you need a data translation layer, and then you have outputs in systems like your planning system, like your workflow management system, which might be your CRM or your communication systems. So that's a different data model that is changing the role that the CRM plays. What I will say is books and records law is not going to change. You need books and records, and it is hugely valuable for regulators to know, I know how to go into a Redtail instance. I know how to go into Wealthbox. I know how to go into Salesforce.
Yeah.
What we're seeing as kind of the paradigm shifts is advisors and their firms are starting to identify what is the best possible system of work for my team, where we've been talking about single pane of glass forever, at least forever in my mind since I've been in this industry.
I've been talking about it for 20 years.
We are closer to that right now than we ever have been because AI is able to do the architecture level work so teams can focus on the user experience. And so I do think the CRMs are either going to figure out how to invest in user experience better to maintain their role as that system of work and workflow execution, or we're going to see where an advisor is logging in change into something that is more workflow directed, that says, here's the value of your book of business. This is how it benchmarks you against your peers. And here are the top opportunities for you to grow that and also be able to execute it. And, in some cases, that'll be proprietary. In some cases, that'll be an AI system of work. And in other cases, that'll be the CRM. What's exciting about this is that it's real and it's happening. I get less picky about kind of what the specific architecture decisions are there.
Got it. I'm going to change gears a little bit. This is one of the things you and I have kind of gone back and forth with, and I am in total agreement with you because that's the kind of what I've been thinking for the better part of the last 10 years. But when we had our chat, we both agreed that we thought that the seat licensing is a broken model, and that, also advisors are super nervous, right, about who really owns that data, right? And the advisor's nervous about the data. I can go back to 2000s, right? But comment on those two items. I want to have your perspective shared. I may be dropping a little bomb in here on this one.
Well, I think, as the age-old adage goes, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. And so we're seeing a lot of new incumbents come in and offer the world, and for good reason. You look at the Kitch's map, it's tripled in the last couple of years. That is a net good thing. This industry has been underserved from a technology perspective, but advisors should be nervous. Their relationship with their clients is the most valuable asset that they have, and privacy matters there. And so a few things that I would be hyper conscious of that we were very intentional about is any kind of anonymized data benchmarking default on or off? Do I understand, if I am going to participate in that, exactly what the mechanism is where I no longer own my data? With Zocks, you maintain ownership of your data. If you decide that you no longer want to be a Zocks customer, you get an automated export of all your data and you get confirmation when it's been deleted. And oh, by the way, we do not do any broad benchmarking. The only things that we do are when firms approach us to say, we'd like to do a value study within our ecosystem. Here are the parameters. Can you work with us on that? We will then, with their permission, go and work on that. And it frankly makes it harder because the data is valuable. It's really tempting to try to go learn from it. And especially in the world of AI, I think the single most important thing is having a strong understanding of what is my data scope, where is my PII going, and do I maintain ownership of it?
Mm-hmm.
To your second question, it's really important is when we think about vertical SaaS, so the way that advisors have typically consumed technology, it's always been license based. And the reason for that is if you're a Redtail or you're a Wealthbox, your 100th license actually doesn't cost you very much. Like there's some setup cost and there's some database compute, but you get returns to scale. Now, for the AI native companies, our costs scale with usage. Like our best users are also our most expensive users. And so as a technologist, I hope for a system where you can align those incentives, where we can say, hey, here are the outcomes we're going to help you drive using our system. You're going to pay based off those outcomes. So if you grow, we grow. And what more could you ask for? Now, it's going to take longer to get there than we think it would. It takes a while to change, and it's scary because from a budgeting perspective, firms want to know what their budget needs to be, how much they're going to spend on their tech stack and how much variance there is there. But I do think it's a better aligned system.
Well, for two things, I've been professing that the current models are broken. All right. How many basis points are you going to pay? The seat licenses. And that one really annoys me, quite frankly, because I look at the seat licenses as a way of, ensuring revenue to these companies. But I'm like, you may have a person who's using it twice a month, and you may have another person or another advisor using it 200 times a month. And that just doesn't seem equitable to me.
Right. When you have one of the best points of view in the entire industry on this, when you talk to budget owners and you bring this up, what do they say? Like, do they agree? Do they not agree? What's the feedback you get? Because as a CTO, you're thinking about this all the time.
Yeah, I think you and I could go on with this conversation for a while at this point. I was fascinated when we got together earlier this week when we kind of ended up and you shared with me that firms are coming to you with hiring questions, not just technology questions. So tell us about that, please.
Yeah, it's been really fun for me. This is you know me, I love connecting with these firms and I love seeing our advisors win. One of my strongest held beliefs is that AI is going to do the routine manual labor that has kind of plagued this industry. Well, what that means is that the people you want to have on your team actually need a different skill set. They need to be more creative. They need to think about art of the possible. And they need to kind of think of how can I be a force multiplier on the business? So we're starting to see firms think about, hey, what does our administrative staff look like if they are a force multiplier? Who do the people that we need? Who are the people that we need? What are their backgrounds? And then, frankly, what is a leveling guide so that we can keep them around because they are immensely valuable? And you and I connected on this. My belief is that we are going to see more liberal arts-minded people entering this industry who are curious and creative and want to connect versus being more execution-oriented.
And know how to communicate.
Yes.
Know how to communicate. So, Steven, two items as we're winding down our discussion today. And the first, I'm kind of doing a little bit of a sidebar here. The first question I'll ask is, who are two or three people or firms right now that are doing really admirable work that you're looking at, and why are they worth watching?
Yeah. So a few people come to mind, and first is one of our earliest partners and biggest advocates, and that's Danny Fava over at Carson Wealth. So Danny has been really loud about the early investments that they have made in AI and the business impact that it's having. Danny was one of the first people to partner with us and really see kind of the forest through the trees of how powerful the structured data was going to be. And their Steve AI platform is truly state of the art and incredible, and definitely go check her out. She's talked about how they're tracking number of households served per advisor, how they're tracking organic growth per advisor, and how they're actually seeing margins improve. So that is someone that is on the right path.
Danny's super smart.
Yeah.
I've sat in a couple meetings where I've just been so impressed.
Yeah, the second person I would call out is Erica Molina over at Cambridge. So, in the broker dealer space, they have lived in a world where you have advisor choice from a technology platform perspective for so long. And what that means is it's really hard for these broker dealers to build systems because they're constantly having to integrate with whatever platforms the advisors happen to be using. Well, with AI, we're seeing that integration layer change, which means that they actually can start as the broker dealer working on how do we streamline these workflows? How do we make it as easy as possible for our advisors to execute their businesses, grow their businesses, lean deeper into the practice management side? And Erica's just been an incredible partner for us and an incredible partner to the advisors over at Cambridge. So those are two people I'd call out that we are lucky to partner with. We learn from all the time and I think are doing amazing work.
That's fabulous. That's fabulous. So, before I get too far and give you the mic for 90 seconds here, you won the Mary Blackburn Challenge, and you guys chose a group to donate the money to, Forging Youth Resistance. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so in my personal time, which it turns out that I have some of other than my work time, I am very passionate about fitness and well-being. So I was a competitive wrestler in high school. I've competed at the highest level in CrossFit. And one of the things that I've seen is the power of youth getting in touch with working hard, putting a barbell in their hands. And something I'll call out CrossFit as is it has really revolutionized the people that have access to a barbell. And frankly, the importance of strength training for everyone and how it is one of the highest indicators of longevity.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a group in Denver that works with youth centers to actually get them in the gym, to get them on a workout program, to create like a big brother, big sister program where they're connected to them. I had helped when I was in town incorporate them into a few competitions that we did. And it's just incredible to see these kids being connected to working hard, and really proud of the work that that group is doing. So wanted to support them.
That's terrific. That's terrific. All right. As we close, I like to give our guests a 90 seconds to have their own 1% better everyday flash. So with no script, no guardrails, no nothing, Steven, take 90 seconds.
Yeah. So, right now we are being inundated with AI this and AI that. And it is easy to think of it as binary. Either I am totally against AI or I think it's the panacea and it's going to fix everything. And the reality is, and I tell this to advisors all the time, it's just a tool in your tool belt. And so I tell everyone, you need to abstract away, I need to be AI-ifying things and get back to what are the things that are hampering my business from growing, and what does success look like, and start there. And if you can define one thing, the most important thing, and start with that, it might be an AI solution. There are incredible solutions out there. There has never been more solutions for this industry. Or it might be spending some time on operations. It might be going and spending a little more time on those job descriptions. So I encourage everyone to get back to first principles, really think about what problem do I want to solve, and then go and set off on the effort of trying to solve that. At the end of the day, this is a really exciting time to be in financial services.
It
It
is.
is moving really fast. And what that'll result in is more people getting help, more people being financially independent, being financially educated. And if we can all push towards that goal, it's going to result in better business outcomes. And it's also going to keep your tech partners honest and making sure that they are helping you grow. So start with the basics. Don't get scared by AI, but also don't think that it's a panacea that's going to solve all your problems, and take the first step in solving your first problem.
Steven, I want to thank you for being on the show. Many topics we covered, and I'm so appreciative of your time and of being able to learn from you.
Yeah, Chip, it's an absolute pleasure. I love working with your team. I really enjoyed the roundtable. I'm looking forward to joining more. And I can't wait to take you up on that golf round you promised me next time I'm in Denver.
That is a promise. So thanks, Steven.
All right. Good afternoon.
Hey, RJ, that was a terrific call. I love Steven's perspective, and it was fresh, and we had great dialogue.
Yeah, that was an interesting conversation to eavesdrop on. Just listening to him, there was a lot of common sense he was using. And what stood out to me, it was always going back to client relationship and making the client experience, probably is a better way of putting it. And that seems to be his focus. Yeah, using AI, not to cut costs, but to improve the client experience. And that's what stood out to me.
Well, and I think that's a lot of people out there, think AI can just do a search. It can do, and it doesn't have the humanistic, or it doesn't drive human interaction. That's wrong. That is absolutely wrong, because done right, I think it enables human interaction and makes it richer.
Absolutely.
I had a couple takeaways from our call. This is one that resonates, and I think I have mentioned it probably in the last 4 or 5 podcasts, but the data problem is no longer optional. It's got to get squared away. And if firms don't, then they're gonna struggle with that. So definitely focus on data, which is going to drive a lot of the opportunities on top of that, both from a AI and knowledge-based perspective, as well as interaction with clients. 2, I loved our conversation on seat licensing. And I've been professing this for a number of years, but the concept of who uses it gets charged for it. And it's something that I think is going to come forward as we look forward and expand into the future. And then I loved his comment about advisor teams and the human aspect about it. And the next advisor teams are going to not look like anything that an advisor team has been structured as in the last 20 years. It's going to go really to being able to have a firm control the data. It's going to be able to enable that interaction, and it's going to enable a lot of the folks that are working in the field to be more effective, I think, and efficient with different agents and whatnot. So I found that fascinating. I could probably go talk about that for a while, but that's where we are. As we close at this point, Steven was a fabulous guest, and I am grateful for him to be on the show. And so we'll close it up here. This is Chip Kispert wishing you well until our next edition of the Beacon 1% Better Everyday podcast.
You're not going to quote your favorite person?
Here it is, to quote Ted Laszlo, and this is my favorite quote: "Be curious, not judgmental." Have a great day.
All right. Excellent. And Chip, we need to add in a shout out, as this podcast is brought to you by Beacon Strategies, LLC, the go-to resource for roundtables, consulting, and services that support wealth management firms and their providers. If you need some industry perspective or help, please visit beaconstrategiesllc.com. And thank you for listening to the Beacon 1% Better podcast. We ask you to share this podcast, rate it, and leave a review, because this actually helps others find the podcast. Again, thank you for listening, and for Chip and everyone at Beacon Strategies, I'm RJ Malik, and we look forward to you joining us for the next podcast.